Hi everyone, my name is Vince Gauman. We are in the midst of a global awakening unlike any other humanity has ever experienced before. It is an initiation into a higher state of consciousness, and all of us are part of this awakening. None of us can escape it. And it demands a lot out of us. It demands that we question what we've known to be true. It demands that we look at what we've considered as normal and wonder if normal is actually dysfunctional and how dysfunctional it is. It demands that we use our critical thinking and our felt sense, as I spoke about in a recent video. Critical thinking and felt sense is hard for people these days, it seems. And one of the reasons is because as soon as we use our critical thinking and use our felt sense, we have to open ourselves up to something or many things that are not comfortable. So we'd rather not critically think. We'd rather not use our felt sense because there's a level of comfort that's created in avoiding those two gifts within us. So there are three thresholds that we are being pushed up against right now. And these three thresholds are common to all initiations when we're moving from one state of consciousness to another. It's just very magnified right now because of how big this is. And there's a lot of people out there just still hoping that we'll get back to normal. They want to know how to cope through this. And anytime someone says they want to cope through this, it makes me really feel like they're very invested in normal. It's not about questioning and awakening and willing to examine hard truths. It's just help me cope so I can go back. And that's fine, you can have that. But this is not what this time is about. It's actually about being courageous. It's about having the courage to question, to examine what we call normal. And I just want to say that so much of what we've called normal is going to crumble, and is crumbling, has been crumbling for a while. The fear-based, shame-based institutions, infrastructure, systems, so much of which is governed by the nefarious shadow government, the patriarchal system, those are going to continue to crumble. They have no place in the new emerging world. They have no place. They don't belong. So when we try to hang on to that, it's just a sign, obviously, that we're afraid. And it's a sign that we are just really inured by the spell of normal. So let's look at these three thresholds. The first threshold is, what is your threshold for feeling? It's feeling. So Dan Siegel has a great phrase. He calls it your window of tolerance. So what is your window of tolerance? How much space do you create inside to feel emotion? How much room do you allow within you to experience uncomfortable feelings? So I'm using the word threshold. What is your threshold for feeling? And specifically, what is your threshold for feeling uncomfortable? Because now it's about feeling uncomfortable. And if we don't want to feel uncomfortable, if we have a small threshold or a low threshold, and our small window of tolerance for feeling uncomfortable, then how well are we going to go through this initiation? How well will we transition? We are going to cling to normal because we have a low threshold for feeling uncomfortable. And so this is about feeling uncomfortable. It is about heartbreak. Heartbreak is heartbreak is how well do you allow something that's really difficult to consider, how well do you let that hit home in your heart? How well do you let it break your heart open such that you feel tremendous grief, or maybe even tremendous anger? because anger is a great catalyst for initiating change. Anger is the voice that says no. Anger is the voice that says, I will not stand for this. I will not tolerate this. So anger is a sacred emotion that can really catalyze us through these times. But if we have a threshold for anger and general discomfort and grief, then how well are we going to transition? How well are we going to move through this initiation? It's going to be that much harder. You see where I'm going, right? So the first threshold is feeling. The second threshold is truth. So we are increasingly going to be shown things that are going to be disturbing. We are increasingly going to be given information that has been kept secret, behind the scenes, in the shadows, that are going to make us feel really uncomfortable. How well do we let that in? The Zen monk Dogen once said, we must be willing to be disturbed by the truth. I love that saying, we must be willing to be disturbed by the truth. But the thing is, if my threshold for feeling, hence being disturbed, is low, then how much do I allow truth in? Because the truth hurts. But if I don't want to hurt, then I'm not going to let in truth, you see? So the threshold for feeling is interwoven with the threshold for truth. And what are some of these truths? Well, one truth on a very general level is it's not been what it seems. It's not what it seems to be. What we thought was going on is not actually true. Maybe our government doesn't have our best interests as much as we thought. Maybe there's a lot more nefarious agendas at play than we can imagine. Maybe our children are being abused much more than we want to know. Child sex trafficking and exploitation is one place to look, but we don't have to look there. We can just look at how the church is being revealed for all its sexual violations against our most precious little ones. Or we can really let in the fact that the school system is incredibly abusive. Not all aspects of the school, but a great deal of it, in the fact that children are coerced, and we call that education. Can we let that in? Can we let these truths in? Can we let in these truths that maybe we aren't who we think we are? Maybe we thought we were someone, but maybe that's not really who we are. You see, when we awaken, the ego begins to dissolve, and it can be incredibly disorienting. It can be incredibly scary because we are being dismantled. The ego structures that we've identified with, the survival adaptation structures, begin to dissolve as we heal what's long been underneath them, what's long given rise to them, such as our fear, our shame, our grief, our rage, our anger, our hatred, all those things that haven't been processed. As they get processed, the identity shifts and it moves into new levels of truth of who I am. As we awaken to our soul, suddenly we are much bigger than who we thought we were. We have a powerful soul. Well, then who am I then? How well do I let that in? So truth, feeling, you're beginning to see how they intertwine and how these two thresholds are vital to consider in this great time of change. Number 3, you may guess by now, but the third threshold is uncertainty. People are terrified of the unknown. And I understand that. I respect that. But it is important to at least name it, that the unknown is scary. But the thing is that's where we're going. We're not going to a new normal. See, people say we're going to a new normal because they want to hang on to the old. And that's just the fear of uncertainty speaking up. And so where we're going is actually a deep unknown. A deep unknown. We cannot at this point really confidently predict where we're all heading. And so we must accept this. But to accept it, we need to feel. We need to feel uncomfortable. If we cannot feel uncomfortable, if we can't let that move through our body, if we cannot befriend these uncomfortable emotions and sensations that are moving through us, as we consider the unknown, then of course we're going to cling to normal. Do you see? And if we cling to normal, then it's much harder to open to new truths. It's much harder to move through this time of change. And so letting these 3 thresholds into your heart daily, monitoring how well you move through these 3 thresholds, what your thresholds are for each, is actually vital for how well you awaken, how well you ascend in this new emerging consciousness, how well you are flexible and open. Healing yourself is essential, because the more we hang on to old trauma, and really hanging on is maybe not the best way of saying it, because a lot of this is just an unconscious addiction to old trauma imprints and trauma identities. But the more we have trauma unresolved in our system, the more we will cling to normal, because those trauma imprints are the normal that we're used to. They are the foundations for all of our normal. And this includes how, when we heal, we also begin to question our childhood. We question maybe that I didn't get my needs met as much as I thought. Maybe my parents enacted big failures of love. And so if we actually start to let that in, and we feel the heartbreak of what our history is, how much pain we suffered as children, and how much pain we still suffer with because of what happened when we were kids, if we can let that in, then there begins to be a dissolution of all the trauma imprints and the programming that we've kept. And as that starts to happen, as that dissolution happens, we begin to open. And that opening allows us to let in truth, let in uncertainty, let in feeling, because we've been doing it in our own healing journey. So your healing is of utmost importance. The people that will struggle a lot in this great time of awakening are those who have not done their healing work. They are stuck in the old world, the old dogmatic imprints of trauma that have wedged themselves well into the cellular biology. And so I'll leave that all with you to let simmer in your consciousness. If you would like assistance with your healing journey, I invite you to look at the work I do healing people with Starlight, both in person and remotely. I have clients around the world. It makes no difference how close or far you are. It's the magic and mystery of Starlight to help you heal, help you feel empowered, and help you awaken from the dream of normal. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching.